Hello. Today is Wednesday, May 27th. Welcome to episode 600 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. I'm NSI Advisory Board Lester Munson. I'm joined today by senior fellows Algene Sajari, John Lipsey, and Andy Kaiser. Folks, this is the 600th episode of Fault Lines. We started this podcast in 2019. Amazingly, the first topic we discussed on the podcast 7 years ago was Iran. Iran had struck Saudi oil facilities. We talked about that. Evidently, we have not solved the problem of Iran in the 7 years of Fault Lines has been making this effort, because we're going to talk about Iran today. The U.S. has a ceasefire and a war going on with Iran. It's a Schrodinger's cat issue, as John Lipsey will carefully explain in a few minutes, and subject to interpretation from the outside. Does the observer change the nature of the event? It is a fundamental philosophical and theological question that humanity has wrestled with for thousands of years. And here it is, perhaps the basis of the way we think about the war with Iran. Algene, I want to go to you first here. There's some history, in addition to what Fault Lines has done on Iran. The Obama administration had a different approach to dealing with the regime in Tehran. Do you want to kind of level set for us what we saw about 10 years ago in terms of U.S. policy?
Sure. I want to start by saying, Obama famously summarized his foreign policy guiding principle as don't do stupid stuff. And he got criticized for it, including by his fellow Democrats. Many, including Democrats, opposed the JCPOA. And here we are, years later, looking at Iran again. Don't do stupid stuff sounds a lot better than do stupid stuff, which seems to be our current approach to Iran. And that's not just my opinion. Like Obama, Trump's own allies in the Senate, Republican Senators Wicker, Cruz, and Graham, are ringing the alarm about the current approach to Iran. And they've pointed out that right now, as we prosecute this war, Iran is getting stronger and richer than it was before. This war has put Iran in a position to close down the Strait of Hormuz anytime it wants and charge fees or tolls on ships that want to get through. And so this is reportedly one of the main issues in the current draft MOU that's being negotiated. And it's important to remember that this was not an issue prior to the war. And now we're just basically looking at kicking the can down the road on the uranium issue for 60 days. That's exactly what Iran wants. I heard yesterday John Bolton noting that every day that goes by is a gift to Iran, and it postpones a day of reckoning. We're not on the verge right now of something that ultimately history will show was a catastrophic mistake for the United States, in my opinion. And Donald Trump thinks everyone wants to make a deal. He's the king of the deal, right? The art of the deal. That's not what Iran wants. And they know that Trump is desperate to resolve this conflict with the midterm elections upon us. And so that's where I think we are today. Unfortunately, we have not solved this issue. And unfortunately, I think we're in big trouble as we negotiate these MOU.
Andy, Algene, who is, I think it's fair to say this, Algene, on the Democratic side of things, is quoting John Bolton and various Republican senators. We like to try to find fault lines here. She seems to have gone said there is no fault line. We're all on the same continent. Things are not splitting apart. What do you say about this issue? Do you agree with her interpretation of our current situation vis-a-vis Iran?
Yeah, I think we do have a bit of a fault line here, but I won't dispute many of the things Algene highlighted, of course. But I think the idea that the president was going to be invested in a long-term Middle East war is not particularly, illustrative of his past comments. I mean, he clearly has no interest. He wants out now. That's very clear. I totally agree with Algene. The Iranians know that, and they've known that since day one. It was not a matter of if, but when the United States would sort of walk away based on the construct that we had laid out. But I do want to talk about what's been achieved, and I actually, this is where there is a fault line. I think it's not just the Iranian military has been degraded, their missile program's been degraded, their nuclear program's been degraded. Those you could point to as important strategic objectives for the United States and our allies. I think the important thing that's come out of this conflict is the United States has proven Iran is the emperor with no clothes. Iran cannot protect its own proxies like Hezbollah in Lebanon. We killed 2 levels of its leadership. We operate with impunity inside Iran. We control their airspace. I think this has fundamentally changed the dynamic of how our allies and partners and some adversaries view Iran in the Middle East. They're not a guarantee. They're not a security guarantee, a guarantor at all. They decided one of their actions, of course, was to indiscriminately launch missiles and drones against other foreign countries that they had relationships with, the Qataris. There was some reports of the Turks getting hit, the Emiratis, of course, who they despise. But if you're looking at that balance of power where Iran was the big elephant in the room and the United States for 47 years would just kind of, okay, yeah, they're bad, another UN resolution, oh, we don't like them, here's pallets of cash, please do the right thing. I do think that's all been upended. You see countries like Lebanon coming to the conclusion that perhaps negotiating with Israel is more in their long-term strategic interest than a security guarantee that doesn't mean squat from the Iranians and Hezbollah.
John, it seems to me we're getting close to a quantum physics debate here, and the nature of being and all that good stuff. How do you see these 2 different views of what's happening with Iran?
Yeah, well, I think there's truth in both. I was on this podcast about a month or so ago when we first entered into the ceasefire. We sort of termed it Schrodinger ceasefire because it was unclear whether we were in one or not. I think that we're still in that sort of state of affairs. And at that time, I expressed kind of bewilderment that we were chasing after a deal that I didn't expect to come to fruition. I'll just remind us that I think Andy alluded to it, when the president went into this conflict, he set out very limited objectives, and none of it entailed some sort of ultimate victory over the regime or regime change, notwithstanding what people often claim. It was limited to their missile production capabilities, their military capabilities, and the like. Those were largely degraded. There's been a lot of focus on Iran retaining a certain amount of existing stockpile, but the production capability was substantially degraded. That seemed to me to be a reasonable objective for a conflict with Iran, and I think a deal that where that regime walks away from their modus operandi, their fundamental objectives vis-a-vis Israel or the United States or the region. We just heard from the new supreme leader yesterday, reiterating those fundamental views of just perpetual conflict with Israel and the United States. So my view is this is something that we should look at as a containment and maintenance operation, that over the long term, that this isn't something that's going to be solved or resolved, as demonstrated by this being Algene, something that the Obama administration was trying to deal with many years ago, that NSI Fault Lines dealt with on its first episode 600 episodes ago, and on and on through the Biden administration and now the second Trump administration. And so 49 years or whatever it is of conflict with this regime, and I expect that to continue. I think one of the reasons that's going to continue, and one of the reasons that we need that it's right to have limited objectives in this conflict is, look, we're showing that our our military capability, yes, it is significant, as Andy laid out, but also has real constraints. And those constraints are that we are not able to defend infrastructure that resides throughout the Middle East amongst our allies. And that is why they have become hesitant in their support for continuing the campaign, and why the president is facing real constraints in his ability to persist with a military campaign. We're just not able to defend the energy or potentially, water infrastructure and the like. And that's a real failing of our military and our political leadership over a number of years, both sides of the aisle. But it's also something that, frankly, reinforces the rationale for the operation in the first place, because it was foreseeing that sort of scenario where Iran was building up its missile capability and would have that sort of veto over any future action by the United States. And I think the action that we took kept that window open, and that those options available to the United States moving forward to take action against any attempts to reconstitute the nuclear program, or to threaten the strait in the future, or what have you.
Good stuff, everyone. I because it's the 600th episode, I feel compelled to think maybe a little bit more broadly about just this moment. And I think it's notable that Iran, while it is not the peer competitor threat to the United States that China potentially is, it is a gigantic problem for national security. And any number of presidents have really floundered or struggled with this question. Going back to Jimmy Carter, the hostages that were from the U.S. embassy that were taken by the Iranian revolutionaries in 1979, probably helped contribute to Carter's defeat against Reagan in 1980. Reagan had the Iran-Contra affair, where he was selling missiles to the Iranians in a utterly fruitless search for moderates. You keep going through history. Bill Clinton, as if my memory is correct, released sanctions on pistachios from Iran as a way to kind of begin to normalize relations. That did not work during the administration.
Pistachios didn't work, Les?
I love pistachios. I'm more of a California pistachio guy at the end of the day. I'm moderately disappointed that they've stopped dyeing them red. I don't know why they stopped doing that. Is that maybe that red dye is bad for you? Anyway, the George W. Bush administration let Iran start a nuclear weapons program and kind of averted its gaze because it was focused on other things. The Obama administration negotiated JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which was, in my view, and I know there's some disagreement here on this podcast, in my view, was such a weak agreement, the president didn't even submit it to the Senate for approval as a treaty because he knew it would not pass. He knew it was an agreement that would not pass muster. The first Trump administration, arguably, in my view, did a little bit better, had some strikes against key Iranian officials who were genuine bad guys, got us out of the JCPOA, which was a bad deal in the long run, in my view. But now, and then the Biden administration, I think kind of oblivious to what was really going on in the Middle East, ignored the rise of Hamas and Hezbollah and these other forces and was completely taken, captured flat-footed by Hamas's attack, which was really driven by Iran against Israeli civilians on October 7th, 2023. And now we have the Trump administration that's got itself in a real pickle. How do they get out of this deal? I agree with you, John. At the end of the day, the U.S. and you too, Andy, that the U.S. has really reduced the ability of Iran to act in the region. We've hit their missile sites. We've reduced their ability to use drones. Their proxy forces are very much on the back foot. That's largely because of Israel. However, the Strait of Hormuz question is a real problem, and it does kind of get to eye of the beholder stuff as to has Iran benefited from this, at least strategically in some sense. At the end of the day, the real question is Iran's nuclear weapons program, and it is about, as Trump says, the dust, the enriched uranium that is in Iran. Can the administration get rid of that? If there is a path forward here that gets to all of that, all of the nuclear material, potential nuclear weapons material coming out of Iran, then this is going to be a win for the Trump administration. If President Trump is not able to do that, he's going to get mixed reviews on this going forward. I still think on balance it's better, but I could certainly see the case that Algene was making earlier that it's maybe not as great as people think. All right. Does anyone have any final comments before we wrap the 600th episode?
I want to just pick a bone on the straight conversation because I think it's become a little silly. Like this isn't a new discovered thing for Iran. They don't have a new novel leverage over the strait.
You mean, John, are you saying that they didn't just discover in the last month that they can hold the strait at threat?
Yeah,
like this isn't a revelation to them.
That's what I'm saying.
They didn't charge,
and it's
they
not
didn't charge tolls before.
Yeah, well, but they always could have. Like so.
But they didn't.
Not really.
So here's the critique has been that this is something new. They haven't done it before, what have you, and that our actions has created this new revenue stream, what have you. Like what the Obama and Biden administration foreign policy crew have said is that we always understood that this was a potential challenge or outcome or bad consequence of taking military action against Iran, that they could take action against the strait and close the strait, and that would have bad ramifications. And so Tony Blair, Jake Sullivan, as they have said it, they're always very careful not to take any actions that would cause that outcome. So what they're saying is that they were deterred from acting against Iran because of the threat that Iran posed to the strait. Okay, they were deterred. This president was not. Iran has now taken action. You now have to deal with that. The question is whether you should or should not have been deterred by Iran's threat to the strait, not that it's created some new point of leverage for the Iranian regime.
Can I respond? And then Algene, feel free to jump in here. I think at the end of the day, the thing that is going to matter the most is whether President Trump and the United States, whoever is going to be the next president, retains the plausible opportunity to strike at the Iranian nuclear weapons program if necessary. That is the question. That is the deterrence question. If that remains a plausible scenario, and I think it certainly is in this administration, I think they've kind of got that on lockdown, that President Trump would be willing to strike again. But they've got to make sure as they navigate through these discussions with the Iranians that remains a thing. I think at the end of the day, that's the thing that really matters the most.
To me, that and to me, that is the more worrying piece, because I think that the fear amongst our allies in the region around Iran's ability to strike their infrastructure, and our fear about the consequences of that for the global economy and the like, that's the one that is more worrying to me. And our lack of capabilities in place, our anti-drone, anti-missile capability, is a very severe risk and a very severe limitation on our freedom of action to take that subsequent strikes against the nuclear program as needed.
Algene, do you want to weigh in?
To me, yeah, the uranium issue is the key issue, right? And at the end of the day, it doesn't seem like it's anything that's being even really remotely addressed with this MOU. And so, it remains to be seen how this is negotiated, but I don't see Iran caving when it comes to the uranium issue. And so at the end of the day, what will all of this have been for? What will the U.S. deaths, the Iranian children deaths be for, right, if we don't address this issue? And so it's something that we really need to lean in on. It remains to be seen.
That sounds like a call for further strikes, more military action. Keep going.
Andy, do you have final thoughts?
Just that I do think sometimes we get lost in the reason every national security expert in this town, when they war gamed an Iran situation and thought the Iranians would never actually close the Strait of Hormuz or take action that they haven't actually closed it. They just, you have to once a week shoot at a passing ship, and it makes people nervous. The country that is most hurt by the closing of the Strait of Hormuz is Iran.
Amen. And is it possible to wait that out? Is that 3 months, 6 months? Is it a year? I'm not sure we're going to actually get to that question. I will kind of close with a different metaphor. I mow the lawn at my house, and then 2 weeks later, I have to mow it again. Sometimes in the summer, I have to mow it every week. It's crazy. And the grass knows I'm going to mow it. And yet grass grows and forces me to do that. So as long as I have a lawnmower and it's fully charged, look out, grass. Okay, that's a wrap. Thanks to Grace Trice, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their help in producing today's episode. Join us again on Friday, May 29th, for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. We're on YouTube. Check out our channel there for a video of today's episode. If you like what you heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. And special thanks to everyone who's listened for the last 7 years to 600 episodes. We've had a lot of fun. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you on Friday.